It's important we look at the facts. Why?
Douglas Ross is sounding pretty scared.
I believe in independence. And he clapped like a seal.
Hello and welcome to the latest Planet Holyrood. I'm Paul Hutcheon, the political editor of the Daily Record. Joining me this week are regulars Hannah Rodger, who's the chief reporter of the Sunday Mail, and Douglas Dickie of the Scottish Daily Express. So I thought this morning that the first item we would discuss is a look back at the Labour conference in Liverpool, but a major story broke, which has kind of gazumped that. That is, of course, the defection of Lisa Cameron from the SNP to the Tories at Westminster. So she's now a Tory MP. Not exactly great news for Humza Yousaf a couple of days before his conference starts in Aberdeen, but I think that one of the themes of Humza's leadership has been pretty unlucky with timing. I think that it was at Holyrood when he was given a major speech, Colin Beattie was arrested as part of Operation Branchform. So I think this is probably another example of him just not being able to catch a break. Hannah, let's start with you. You used to be the Westminster editor at the Herald. I would imagine that you've had a number of dealings with Lisa Cameron. What did you make of this defection?
Well, you know, regardless of any dealings with Lisa Cameron or not, I think it's absolutely mental. I mean, it's, you know, not... If you think about Lisa Cameron as a person, it's maybe not that surprising, but just it's completely unprecedented. We've never had this situation before where we've had an SNP. I don't think we've had an SNP go to the Tories because, you know, one of the things I'm quite interested in is how she squares such opposing views on the Constitution. You know, I guess that's why we don't see these defections happen. We don't see Tories go to the SNP and vice versa, because they are so opposed to, you know, on the constitutional issue, that it will be interesting to see how she, you know, squares that personally and also, I guess, to her own constituents. I think that if we do look at Lisa Cameron as an individual, I think it's been quite clear for some time that she's not been particularly happy in the SNP. I think, you know, from speaking to contacts and things over the past couple of years, but obviously today, because this has happened, you know, there was this sense that she was a bit of a sort of outlier. She didn't seem to have that many close friends within the party down in Westminster. And I think that that's been quite challenging. She's obviously heavily involved in APPG. So that's, for those who don't know, it's all party parliamentary groups. She's on a large number of them. So obviously she's kind of thrown herself into that, possibly because she's sort of been, I guess, shunned by her own party. But, you know, in terms of why she doesn't have these sort of connections within the party, or why they've kind of taken this stance, you know, she's said that she's been bullied because of her defence of the victim involved in the Patrick Grady case. But from my understanding, this kind of treatment of her has been going on since before that happened. So, you know, I'm not sure what it is about her, maybe personally or whatever, that she's maybe just not really got on very well in the SNP.
I just think that this is a personal thing rather than so much a political thing. She doesn't get on with her colleagues. She's clearly been close to the Tories for a long time. On domestic issues, she's centre-right rather than centre-left. But as you say, Hannah, on the Constitution, I mean, it's the argument now that she used to believe in independence but doesn't now, or is she like a pro-independent Scottish Tory?
I think that's what she needs to, you know, explain, because, yeah, it'll be quite interesting. But, I mean, I'm also fascinated as to how this came about, because speaking to some contacts within the Tories this morning, they didn't know. No. So, you know, whether that's true or not, I don't know. But it's kind of all being pushed as, oh, this was Rishi Sunak's whole thing, and it's a coup for Rishi and stuff. I think Rishi Sunak's got enough going on, without trying to convince Lisa Cameron to join the Tories, but you never know.
Douglas Rock operation. That's my sort of take on
Well,
it.
if it was Douglas Ross, he's not getting the credit for it. It's all been Rishi's great plan, apparently.
So Douglas, a rare bit of good news for the Scottish Tories, if you want to look at it from that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good news for the Scottish Tories. I think it's good news for Scottish Labour. It's allowing them to bring back that tartan Tory attack line towards the SNP. It's funny what you said before, Paul, about Humza Yousaf not being able to catch a break. I don't think he could buy good luck at the moment, but the Colin Beattie thing was very much out of the blue and not within anyone's control really, apart from Police Scotland. But I don't think there's any doubt that Lisa Cameron has timed this to inflict maximum damage on Humza Yousaf and on the SNP. I mean, 2 days before the party conference, from a kind of onlooker, from a title that's obviously not a massive fan of the SNP, it's just quite funny, it's like she couldn't really have done anything else more damaging. I think even calling a by-election wouldn't have been as damaging as that. I know that's something that she'd threatened to do if she was deselected, and obviously that decision's been made, I believe, today. I think the word is that she's not going to seek re-election. From a Tory point of view, they've got her on the bench now for a year, maybe. What is her views on independence? I think she said that she's realised that we're better off finding, solutions together. I couldn't agree more, Lisa. Whether she actually believes that or not, I don't know. But I mean, it's just such, like Hannah said, it's just mental, but incredibly watchable. I feel as though we're watching a car crash within the SNP right now, and people can't take their eyes off it.
You do make a good point, Dougie, about the selection contest that she was currently in the middle of. I think the result is tonight. I think it's clear she was going to lose that. So effectively, she was going to be deselected. Grant Costello was going to win. So I don't think we can downplay the fact that she's maybe trying to save face as well, because being deselected would be an utter humiliation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think a bit of A, a bit of B, a bit of column A, a bit of column B here. She wants to inflict maximum damage, and also she doesn't want to go through the humiliation of being deselected. At the same time, I've seen SNP sources suggesting, this has been on the cards for a while. We're not surprised. Good riddance. I mean, I think there's a bit of turd polishing going on here. They were quite happy for her to run on an SNP ticket 3 times before. I know, obviously, 2017, 2019, they'll claim that the snap election meant that they didn't have time to select a new candidate. But I'm not just buying that. I think they're trying to save face, and I think Lisa Cameron's trying to save face, and I think the SNP are trying to save face. But she's definitely going to be the one who's happier with her day's work, I think.
Anna, what do you think people are going to be talking about at this week's SNP conference?
Lisa Cameron. I think, as much as they won't admit it, they will not admit that this is what they're going to be talking about, but it is what they're going to be talking about. I think that they'll be, talking about the amount of money that Nicola Sturgeon's being paid for her book, which is quite a juicy sum. Mm-hmm. And I think they will be talking about, what else will they be talking about? Maybe the finance investigation, although they don't really seem to want to talk about that in the moment.
Well, actually, I think the independent strategy debate is on the Sunday. So I had a story up about an hour ago. So I think last month, Stephen Flynn and Humza published a motion which said that if they won most seats at the general election, then that would be enough to open indie talks. So my story is that they're going to be changing that to majority of seats, which, given there's going to be 57 seats at the next election, that would mean 29 seats. I mean, is anyone going to buy this, Hannah? Does anyone really think that winning 29 seats is going to lead to independence talks?
Absolutely not. But also, independence talks with who? Because, like, the Tories are not, they're not going to talk back. They're just going to ignore them. And Labour, you know, if they continue the way they're going just now, they'll have absolutely no need. They won't need the SNP. I mean, obviously we've had the by-election, and then if you kind of, I know it's a by-election, so you can't really expand it out to be an indicator of the general election. But if you did, you know, the SNP are going to be in for a bit of a rude awakening. And then we had, what else? Was it the Times poll recently talking about Anas? Was it Anas could be the First Minister?
Yeah.
I made that up.
No, he's on course, yeah.
Yeah, so there's like all these things that Labour has. I don't think Labour's got really an incentive or a need to have discussion with the SNP. So, you know, and also they would have fewer MPs than they have now, and yet they think that that's a mandate to start talking about independence. I mean, the whole thing's just a bit of a mess, to be honest.
Could be like 29 MPs just show up at Downing Street and they're not allowed in.
Yeah, well,
you know, they show up for talks, but there's just no talks. I mean,
I think, Paul, while we're talking about saving face, I think there's a wee bit of saving face in this as well. He knows they're not going to get anywhere near 50% of the vote, which was obviously Sturgeon's first plan. So he set up a plan that they might, you know, possibly win. It's achievable. And then when, as Hannah said, whoever's in number 10 says nope, they can keep their, you know, they can blame the UK government, the big bad bogeyman at Westminster, and just, you know, turn into their supporters and say, well, we've tried again. It's funny what you're saying, that, you know, asking what they're going to be talking about at the conference. I can tell you what they're not going to be talking about, because I had a wee look through the motions this morning, and two of the biggest issues for voters right now are the economy and the cost of living crisis. There'll be zero mentions of the economy in the motions, and there's only 3 of the cost of living crisis, 5 on the NHS, 3 housing, 1 on immigration, 1 on climate change, 44 on independence. So we know what they're going to be talking about. But obviously, you know, maybe that's what Humza Yousaf and co will be talking about on stage, but behind the scenes, it's going to be, you know, Lisa Cameron's defection, the absolute disaster in Rutherglen.
Let's just go through the different sort of strats. So Plan A was a joint agreement on a referendum, dead. Plan B was Holyrood going it alone, Supreme Court killed that. Plan C was Sturgeon's de facto referendum, that's dead. Plan D was most seats, that seems to be dead now. So I think we're on Plan E, which is majority of seats. I mean, we're literally going through the alphabet on this. You know, how long will Plan Z?
Yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah.
To be fair, I am looking forward to this conference. I think it will be a good one. I mean, we've got the independent strategy on Sunday. I think we've got Humza's speech maybe Tuesday. So I don't think it's going to be the usual stage-managed party conference. I think that there will be a vigorous debate on these things, and we'll see splits and rows. But again, Hannah, you know, just get the impression that Humza's on the downslope here.
I think, you know, no, I don't think so, actually. I think that he's never really been on the upslope, if that's the right way to put it. You know, as you said, he's had an absolute shiter, if I can say that, of a time since he became First Minister. He's not had one thing that's gone right. I mean, it's just been a disaster. And I think, unfortunately, he has struggled to kind of find his footing and get, and make progress. It just seems like every time there's a big announcement or, like this with the first party conference, he's just given a massive turd to deal with, basically.
Do you think that, we're kind of teasing the strategies, but they in order to keep their core vote and their independence base sweet, they do have to have some sort of strategy. They just let it drift and try to kick it into the next Holyrood election. I just don't think they'd probably lose even more votes, wouldn't they, Dougie?
I think so, yeah. They've got to keep that core. How much that core is, it's going to be difficult to tell, but I don't think their core vote is 45%, which is, what they've polled in previous elections. But, these people are drifting away now. A lot of the ones who were maybe swept up in the emotional tide of 2014, and then obviously with Brexit, we had the pandemic, but things are getting a bit back to normal. So they've got to hold on to those core voters. The problem is obviously this is a party of government here, and it sometimes feels like they're running the government as if it's their own kind of private fiefdom. And what SNP policy, it just becomes the de facto government policy, regardless of whether it's devolved or reserved. But I think quite a few independent supporters who don't support the SNP actually claim that the SNP haven't been speaking about independence enough, and that's why they lost in Rutherglen. So I don't agree with that. I don't think that is why they lost in Rutherglen. I think people want to see change, but maybe that's why he's so keen again to be seen to have some sort of plan, any plan, even if that plan is complete and utter nonsense.
Well, yeah, you also have to remember that you've got Alex Salmond's Alba party every single day hammering on about independence, and whether you like Alex Salmond or not, he has been the leader of a party at a time where they came the closest to getting independence, at least achieving a referendum. And I think that's another aspect of it. They have to have a really strong plan for achieving independence, because otherwise those real staunch voters who just care about independence, there's nothing to stop them from going to Alba. So it's...
I'm going to ask you about that, Hannah. Obviously Alba have crashed and burned in elections, but do you think that it's fertile ground for them just now to make some sort of breakthrough? I do honestly think that, because as we've said, the SNP, there's a lot of, obviously domestic issues that people are unhappy about and they're not being tackled. Then we've had these various scandals, NHS, ferries, cost of living crisis, and then we've had internal individual scandals within the SNP. And I think, now, because they don't have this sort of concrete, they don't seem to have, we're on, what did you say, plan F now in terms of achieving independence. I think that, they risk not being seen as credible on that, which is their core sort of issue. And I think Alba are actually, they're not doing too badly in terms of making inroads in that aspect. Now, whether that translates at the ballot box, I don't know. But I think that they've probably got a better shot at the next general election and then the next Holyrood elections than they've had, obviously, any time in the past. I reckon the best thing Alba could do is ditch Salmond to make way for someone else. I think he's the obstacle to Alba's success rather than their pitch to the electorate. I think that they would have an appeal to an impatient wing of the independence movement, but I think that if you look at Salmond's poll ratings, he's had a difficult few years. That's clearly taken its toll on his reputation. And so maybe a fresh face might do Alba some good.
Got any suggestions, Paul?
No one springs to mind, but
Lisa Cameron, perhaps?
Well, I think she's now a big pro-unionist.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I don't think she would fit the
Welcome
bill.
aboard, Lisa.
Yeah. So let's turn our attention to the thing I wanted to talk about at the beginning of the show, Labour Conference. I was there for the duration in Liverpool. It was how can I describe it? A boozy affair, certainly in the evenings. I think that Labour will be delighted with how it went. Starmer's speech was pretty well received. I don't think I've ever covered a Labour conference where the party's been so united and disciplined. But before I come to the content, Hannah, what did you make of the glitter bomb incident at the beginning, which, let's face it, could have been a lot more serious?
Yeah, well, it definitely could be a lot more serious. I think first thing he should do is hire better security guards. I mean, that guy was up there for ages clinging on to him. But apart from that, I absolutely loved it because I love glitter. And I just thought it was quite,
I would rather be covered in paint than glitter. I think it'd been better getting dumped paint over his suit. He'll be picking that at his hair for weeks.
Oh, I know, like getting glitter off yourself is a complete nightmare.
His dry cleaner must be rubbing his hands with glee.
Yeah, but I do think that actually that worked that was hugely beneficial for Labour because, they can say that, because it was somebody from Just Stop Oil, wasn't it? I know one of these
links. I think his message was something like update politics.
Yeah, what the things he was shouting didn't quite, but if he is from the Just Stop Oil, we've had the Tories kind of harping on about how Labour are in support of these lefty maniacs. And, of course, if they're protesting at Labour conference, then quite clearly they've got an issue with Labour as well. So it gives him a chance to completely distance himself from that. I also thought his little sort of segue saying, oh, we're the party of power, not protest. And this is why we're, I thought that was very well done. And yeah, I just thought it was quite nice to see little sparkly bits every time he moved when he was talking. So yeah, that was great.
Douglas, obviously the Express is more inclined towards the Conservatives than Labour, but would you accept that Starmer in this speech, he looked and sounded like a PM in waiting?
I think he certainly exuded confidence. I'm not a massive fan of party conference speeches. They're often quite light in detail, and I think this one was kind of no different. But he's certainly cutting a confident figure, maybe more confident than he's been in the past. It's very hard to see anything other than a Labour victory at the next general election, although I noticed that they didn't introduce him as our next Prime Minister. I think they're trying to guard against a bit of triumphalism there, and obviously we've all been there before with Labour. So yeah, I think the big question that came out for me after it is, what does this mean for the man on the street? Tax plans. He was, quite light on his kind of tax plans. I know he spoke about the tax on the private schools and taxing on non-doms and whatnot. But for us in the street, what is a Labour government going to mean for the average man, but or woman, sorry. But all in all, I think he'll be sitting there absolutely delighted with how it went. My colleague,
I still think they're a bit policy light.
100%. I think I've said before on here, I still feel Labour are a bit too much right now relying on what they're not rather than what they are. Of course, you don't interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake, and the SNP here are making mistakes every day, and the Tories down south are also making mistakes. The big thing for me as well is he obviously sees Scotland as the key battleground. I think Anna Starwar and Michael Shanks are the only two politicians he actually mentioned by name in his speech, so it shows how much of a focus they're going to have on Scotland during the election. And then I guess the challenge there is to see how a Westminster government, a Labour government at Westminster will benefit people in Scotland, and whether that can, from a Labour point of view, can that pave the way for a Labour government at Holyrood?
Yeah, well, Hannah, I think this is a really big one. So, next year we've got the general election, 2024. We've got the Holyrood election in 2026. I think a key issue is what impact will a Keir Starmer victory have on Anas Sarwar's chances of becoming First Minister? And I guess it all depends on how successful Starmer is. So if he has a nightmare 2 years, it's going to be difficult for Anas. But if he manages to front load quite popular, bold policies into the first 2 years, it will be a sort of springboard for Anas. Is that how you see it?
I mean, yeah, you've just said everything that I would have said, basically. I mean, if we put it like this, as long as he doesn't have a Hamza year, then it should be all right. But essentially, you don't want, if Labour do get in, you don't want Keir Starmer to do anything that's going to, ruin the chances for Anas. And unfortunately, because being the party of government in Westminster, being the Prime Minister, it's such a high-profile job, it would be quite easy for him to do something that scuppers Labour in Scotland. But I suppose, it's just a sort of delicate dance that you have to do. And I think that would probably help. There'll be a lot more communication and things like that, I presume, around policies and about announcements and things with Scotland in order to stop any sort of awkward moments or unwanted questions or whatever that are going to catch Anas off guard. But, that's not to say that everything will be sort of smooth sailing. But, yeah, as long as he doesn't have a Hamza, it should be okay.
My prediction that they'll probably announce the abolition of the 2 chill cap 2 months before the Holyrood election campaign, something like that. Not that
really?
cynical.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, we found the money. We found the money.
Using child poverty as a election winning.
It's an SNP trick with some money down the side of the couch after all.
All right, let's wrap it up. Good week, bad week. Hannah, starting with you.
Good week is Keir Starmer for his glittering performance at conference. I'm sure Dickie will not be surprised that I'm picking somebody who's Labour. And bad week, I would say, is unfortunately going to be Douglas Ross, because he now has to deal with the nightmare of having an SNP MP who's now a Tory MP, and he's going to be fielding a lot of questions about that. And, if there's any issues with that specific MP or not, we will see. But that's all I'm going to say. Yeah.
Dougie, how about you?
And Hannah, I'm not surprised in the least that you've picked Keir Starmer this week. But you know what? That's absolutely fine. Sir Keir's had a good week. There's no doubt about it. But I've went for Lisa Cameron, who, apart from anything else, given me a massive laugh this morning. I think she has inflicted maximum damage on Humza Yousaf in the SNP, which, as I said earlier, I suspect was her plan all the time. She's avoided the humiliation of being deselected, and she, rumours abound. Maybe a wee trip to the House of Lords after this. Who knows? I've seen that. Maybe.
Yeah, we didn't get a chance to talk about that. Actually, we can save that for another time.
I think she'll be sitting tonight with her feet up and a glass of wine, the good doctor, and having a wee smile to herself. I think she'll be quite happy with her day's work. For bad week, I've went for the Scottish Greens. Obviously, I'm not going to get into the geopolitical situation in the Middle East, but I think Maggie Chapman and Ross Greer have rightly been heavily criticised for their initial response to the Hamas attack on Israel. I mean, there's not much more to say about it. It was really despicable, the way they came out with that. I think the Greens have cemented themselves as the real nasty party of Scottish politics.
Do you not think it just shows a bit of naivety as well? Like, regardless of your own opinions on one side or the other. Like, this is people have been murdered and killed terribly.
Yeah, if you can't say anything nice, don't say it at all. She shouldn't have said anything at all about it if you felt that strongly about it. I know they've come out and kind of clarified their comments, but that's 2 or 3 days later. MD can do that. I think it's been a miserable week for them, and I don't think people will forget that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Hannah. Thanks, Dougie. I think that we'll have another one on next Thursday, in the aftermath of the SNP Conference. I'm sure that will provide us with much to talk about. So
Hannah's good week will still be Keir Starmer, though.
It is every week, but that's fine.
Might be an ass. It's fine. It
could be. I forgot.
Just alternate an ass.
Maybe Jackie Bailey. Who knows?
Well, she always has a good week, to be fair.
Yeah, she does.
All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed the episode, and please tune in again next week.
It's important we look at the facts. Why?
Douglas Ross is sounding pretty scared.
I believe in independence. And he clapped like a seal.